was reflecting earlier on how fortunate I feel to have this opportunity to share with you all. This community is developed organically. I've always trusted that it would just grow if it was founded on generosity. When I first started, I guess, the foundations of MIDL 13 years ago, I was contacted by someone that said the model of how I was running this was impossible. They couldn't succeed. I kind of just stuck with it. Kind of a formula of 90% generosity and 10% have to look after my family and earn some income, hence living a lay life with no support. And it's okay. But what I never foresaw was just the community that built up from it. Community that I get to each week interact with in classes, some in person, private sessions, and in forums, just chatting to these people all over the world. And how generally nice the people that are attracted to MIDL are. Yeah. So when I say I'm grateful, I really mean I'm grateful. When I was just sitting in that sit just before here, before this class, I was sitting here and it was coming near to the end of the meditation, and just that gratitude came up. Yeah, I know Krista and Monica feel the same way. They've shared that with me too. Yeah. So tonight we continue our talk or our journey. I say night because it's night here in Australia. It's 8:30 at night on the East Coast. It was either a choice of this or giving the Dhamma talk at 5 o'clock in the morning. And I just thought that was a bit early. I'm getting up for the 5 o'clock, but I get to be silent. Monica's doing all the talking then. Okay. So we looked at the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, and we looked at the idea of the middle way, avoiding two extremes, and how in our meditation practice we can observe ourselves going between extremes. The extreme of chasing after pleasure, it's like if I just get to this pleasurable state, then everything will be okay. And I share that these vary, I just speak from my own experience in meditation. This is not necessarily, this is the truth. It's just what I experience. They're pleasurable experiences, even in meditation. As soon as I've experienced them, they no longer exist. When I was in my early 20s, it was about 27. It's like the Dharma can give you these really blissful experiences that you stumble into at the beginning of your meditation practice just to bait you in. Yeah, is that right? Yeah, it is. I remember Linda sharing these visions and big experiences and stuff, and I had the same thing. And then spent the next 10 years trying to get back to it. Oh, there's this experience. I can get to that. I'm going to try, and I strive. But what I finally realized is that experiences aren't like that. They're not something to get to. They're something that arose when the conditions of the whole universe, everything's come together right now, including conditions within yourself. It's just right. And then it arises. It can actually surprise us when these things come up. Just surprise. Oh, wow. There it is. Oh, that was easy. Yeah. But what's difficult is to replicate those conditions again because everything is shifting, everything is flowing, everything is changing. Yeah. The other extreme is the extreme of effort, trying to control and effort and strive and suppress and control. That one is exhausting. I've done that one. Yeah, it's exhausting. So finding that middle way, that middle balance, the Buddha said, avoiding these two extremes. The Tathagata has come upon the middle way. Yeah. The middle way. Yeah. So the extremes were the pursuit of sensual happiness based on sensual pleasures, which is inferior, coarse, the way of ordinary people, lacking in refinement and not useful. And I'll include grasping or grabbing on to meditative experience as well in that. Yeah. And the practice of self-exhaustion, which is painful, lacking refinement, and not useful. Avoiding both these extremes, the Tathagata is awakened to the middle way that gives rise to seeing and understanding, leads to calming, direct knowledge, to full awakening, nibbana. And so we talked about that last night. And now we go on in the sutta. And what is that middle way that gives rise to seeing and understanding, leads to calming and direct knowledge, to full awakening, nibbana? It's this very noble eightfold path: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right unification. This is the middle way realized by the Tathagata that gives rise to seeing and understanding, leads to calming, direct knowledge, to full awakening, nibbana. Wonderful. So we come across, or the Buddha, right at the beginning of his teaching career, right at the beginning, he's thinking of how do I explain the Dhamma practice? So this is a newly awakened Buddha, with his first students. He only had 5 in his class. I had 1. Yeah, 1 in my class. Yeah, I used to sit in classes and I wasn't getting paid. I was hired, but I was only getting paid by the people that came. And I used to sit in the class and nobody would show up. So what I would do is I would just sit there and I'd just meditate for the hour and go home. I thought if I went home at the beginning, then I'd kind of put out that energy that I don't really want this to happen. So what I would do is I would act as if the class was actually going, and I did that for how long, Linda? At least a year, wasn't it? At least a year. Until what happened is my mother passed away, and very close to the same time, the father of a Tibetan Buddhist nun, passed away. And she put an advertisement for a meditation teacher, and I was one very broke meditation teacher. And so I replied to that and I started teaching. So who'd been teaching Tibetan Buddhism, so what I was teaching was just weird. It was different. Yeah. I was teaching Vipassana, Satipatthana Vipassana. And I taught what I called letting go meditation, which is softening. And then after a few weeks, she gave me the whole meditation school. And the school, because she'd been through a lot of stress with her father and lots of different things, had shrunk significantly. And then I built it up again until COVID came, and that was the end of it. COVID completely removed that. And that's what caused me to come online. So there's your history there. Yeah. So the Buddha in his first teaching thought, how do I explain it? Well, I'm talking to ascetics, so I talk about finding that middle way, that middle balance. So be really curious about what that actually means. And within my own practice, I found whenever I'm in that middle balance, that middle way, there's a shift in the mind, the heart, and the body from effort to effortlessness. Just reflect, does anyone experience in their practice this shift into effortlessness, where the whole thing just kind of flows? If you haven't, it's coming. You just got to be curious. You just got to be curious about this middle way, this middle balance. And we can find that by relaxing, letting go, but with clear comprehension. It's not just about relaxing. With that mindfulness and clear comprehension of the process of relaxing and letting go. What it feels like to put something down, to release it, to abandon it, to let it go. Yeah. All these sort of words. Yeah. The feeling of lightness and ease that comes from putting something down. So the second part of the teaching that the Buddha presented was the Noble Eightfold Path. And so that's what we're looking at tonight. Yeah, the Noble Eightfold Path. Okay. So the Noble Eightfold Path begins with right view. And let's just see in the Mahasatipatthana Sutta, what did the Buddha say about right view? The Buddha said, a meditator develops knowledge of dukkha, knowledge of its arising, knowledge of its cessation, and knowledge of the path that leads to the cessation of dukkha. This is called right view. Yeah. So the Four Noble Truths, or understanding in the Four Noble Truths, is right view. And later on the retreat, we'll start to look at a formula that right view follows and see how the Buddha and his disciples use that same formula in many different ways. And that's really, really interesting. So it was how the Buddha and his disciples used the formula of the Four Noble Truths to develop insight. But we won't look into that tonight. So what I'll do, I'll share with you how I've experienced right view in my own practice. When we come to the meditation practice, we don't come with right view, we come deluded. So we come with what I call immature view. So it's not right view yet. For me, I began meditation when I was 13 years old. And I started when I was 13 years old because the children at the school liked to beat me up, basically. And so did the teachers. The teachers were quite brutal then. And I used to spend a lot of my lunchtime in the library reading books. And then after school, I would run home as fast as I possibly could. Yeah, and kind of hide the fear of being beat up. Anyway, this had a benefit. All the anxiety that I built up from there made me interested in a book that I found in a Fate that was by Ainsley Mears, a psychiatrist from Melbourne. And he had this process of deep relaxation, yeah, of not doing anything and deeply relaxing. And that was my first taste of some sort of meditation, yeah. So what brought me to the practice was the understanding, and even at 26, I still had that anxiety, yeah. What brought me to the practice was an idea in my head that meditation would somehow make my life better. That meditation would actually bring to an end the suffering that I was experiencing. It would bring an end to what I didn't know about them, which was dukkha. Yeah. And so I began meditation, serious meditation at 26, yeah, in Mahasi tradition, with the idea that this suffering that I've got in my life, this unsatisfactoriness I had in my life will come to an end with this meditation practice. And so I just threw myself in. I've always been in my life, if I'm going to do something, I do it 100% or not at all. Linda's laughing. This is in everything. So I threw myself in and I just went for it. Yeah. So reflect on your own practice. What brought you to meditation? For some people, it might have been just the enjoyable idea of meditating. I think for most of us, it was some sort of suffering, some sort of idea that meditation might be able to give you something that's missing in your life, or meditation might be able to make changes within yourself that would make your life somehow better. Yeah, so that's what drove me. So the Noble Eightfold Path begins with this immature right view, the view that meditation can relieve suffering. When we come into the practice, into the path through that, then we start the meditation practice and we may start to notice, when I do this meditation, sometimes I feel a little bit better than what I did before. Just a bit better. We might get glimpses of some niceness. Yeah. And then, of course, when we feel that, then we try really hard to get them again. And that trying, that striving stops us from getting it. Yeah. So this is the study. We're studying on what it means to relax, to let go. Yeah. What it means to have a mind that is striving and trying to get away from suffering. Now the path of insight has started to open up. So that's immature right view. As the view starts to develop and our practice deepens, and we develop insight into anicca, dukkha, and anatta, and we start to understand that dukkha, suffering, much of it is actually self-created. It's created by the relationship of our mind and heart to what's happening now. So I call that the dukkha gap. So dukkha is the gap between what we think should be happening now and what's actually happening now. Whenever there's a misalignment of heart and mind with reality, and we start to take that stance and say, no, it's not like that. It can't be like that. It has to be like this. The dukkha gap. Yeah. To understand dukkha, we can understand the metaphor of the wheel. Now, this is the Dhamma Chakkapavantana Sutta, so we're talking about the wheel of Dhamma. So literally you can picture a wheel. Now picture a big cartwheel, yeah, like in the Buddha's time. And picture that wheel having a hub, that circular bit in the middle of the wheel. And through that hub of the wheel goes an axle. Now picture that hub being out of line. So it's not circular, it's kind of warped. And so that axle goes through the hub of the wheel. And the hub is warped and the hub has no lubricant at all. And so then when you try to pull the cart, the wheel tries to turn and it grinds. It has a feeling of grinding or friction to it. Can you picture that? That grinding or friction. Yeah. So what dukkha feels like, it feels like that grind or friction within our life. And this dukkha, this grinding, this friction, this difficult to move, like walking through water up to your neck. Anyone ever had that in their life? Every step is just an effort. Yeah? That friction of the wheel trying to turn, unlubricated. Yeah, when the hub doesn't match the axle. That's the feeling of dukkha. So it can be very, very subtle. Just the temperature in this room just isn't quite right. Or it can be so strong that that dukkha pain becomes incredibly unpleasant. Yeah, it's like that friction heats up, becomes hot, it becomes unpleasant, becomes agitated, and it becomes great suffering. So when we're looking at dukkha, it can be incredibly subtle or really, really strong. Yeah. And as a Buddhist insight meditator, you'll gradually become more and more sensitive to dukkha. First, when we come in, we only see gross dukkha. I'm not getting what I want. Yeah, that gross dukkha, the suffering, the fight, the struggle in life. But as the practice deepens, we start to notice that just simple things like seeing and hearing and smelling and tasting, sensing for our body, yeah, have an unsatisfactoriness to them. It takes a lot of effort to process all that stuff. And then we start to notice this narrative in the mind and the churning and the worrying and the fears and the desiring. When I was younger, I used to love to sit in lust. That was one of my favorite drugs. It's like you get a high from it. It's painful. It's unsatisfying. You know, it has a bad taste. But we're strange. We can also sit within aversion and anger. Oh, I'm justified in this, and these people, they just don't know what they're talking about. And we get caught up in these narratives and these fight, these anger and the struggle. It's like our mind is eating this. It's eating. And both of them, they're just junk food. They just leave us just feeling sick in the stomach. There's nothing nourishing about it at all. Nothing nourishing about craving and aversion. As we become sensitive to this, it becomes more and more subtle. Even the slightest bit of irritation becomes painful. Even the slightest little bit of attraction, that little bit of craving, just the slightest little bit, we feel it and it's like a hair touching our eye. It becomes really loud. And meditators share this with me, how their sensitivity, the grosser levels of craving and aversion come down, but their sensitivity to subtlety increases. This is where we're starting to understand the Four Noble Truths. We're starting to recognize dukkha, the first noble truth. Can we recognize when it's present, when it's absent? And you actually get a taste of absence of dukkha as your samatha deepens. As samatha deepens, the hindrances are suppressed, and you can experience a mind and a body free from dukkha. Yeah. Now picture this wheel, and the hub of the wheel is perfectly round. The axle fits perfectly, and it's well greased. Picture pulling that cart, and the wheel is spinning freely, frictionless, free from friction. Sukha. So our task is to understand dukkha and convert it into sukha. Yeah. And this is part of the turning of the wheel of Dhamma. But of course, when we come to the practice, what we mostly see is dukkha, and we get glimpses of sukha. By softening, relaxing, letting go in MIDL, what we're doing is we're training our mind to be able to perceive sukha. Not the pleasure of the senses, but the pleasure of letting them go, releasing them, giving them up. The pleasure of becoming disenchanted with getting pleasure from the senses. Yeah? That dispassion towards getting that pleasure, It doesn't mean you can't experience sensory experience and appreciate something like a wonderful sunset, but it means you feel no need to keep it. You see it arise, you see it cease. You hear this sound, enjoy it, but you let it cease. There's no grabbing or grasping onto this. Just allow everything to come and to go, just like that. Yeah. When we have fully, with the Four Noble Truths, the next part is to understand the conditions for dukkha to arise. What are the conditions that cause dukkha to arise? This is a question to bring into your practice now, whenever you notice it within your practice. And as you soften, relax, let go with clear comprehension, your mind will get to stages where it says, enough. I don't want to let go anymore. This is a bit scary. And there's different stages in mindfulness of breathing that you will see that. It's just like you hit a wall. Yeah, it just won't go any further. It's just like, no, that's it. If I let go anymore, I'm in danger. Enough. So it's understanding, it's being curious about these walls in relaxing, letting go that come up, and noticing that when those walls come up, then hindrances will also start to come up. The different hindrances, which is really interesting. So that's your time for Vipassana insight. Just there. Yeah. The next fourth noble truth, the third noble truth, is understanding the conditions for dukkha to cease. What are the conditions for dukkha to cease? It's important that we work this out for ourselves. The conditions for dukkha to arise, the conditions for dukkha to cease. And the Noble Eightfold Path is a path that leads to cessation of dukkha. Yeah? So it actually creates the conditions for dukkha to cease. As right view matures even further in the practice, I've experienced it as an increased sensitivity to idappaccayata. Idappaccayata, beautiful word, yeah, one of my favorite words, and it means specific conditionality. And that's, you start to develop a sensitivity and see not that things come and go, and not just that things come and go by themselves, but things come and go by themselves due to conditions outside of themselves. Yeah, due to conditions. This is specific conditionality. Just like a plant can't grow independent of the world, the conditions outside of that plant cause the plant to grow, like soil. Yeah, the food in that soil, the water, the light. Change any of those conditions and the plant will cease. This body needs specific conditions to exist now. Change any of those conditions, this body will cease. It will fall back into this planet, into this earth. Yeah? Everything is subject to idappaccayata, specific conditionality. The perception of anicca and anatta, yeah, are one of the conditions for sotapanna stream entry, but also the initial understanding of idappaccayata, specific conditionality. Anything that you're experiencing now is there because conditions outside of itself are such for it to be there. And whatever it is, it will cease when those conditions change. Including if you access jhana, jhana only arises because the conditions outside of itself are such for it to happen. Slight change in those conditions, inaccessible. Idappaccayata. So that's mature right view. So Four Noble Truths and specific conditionality. From right view, or when we come into the meditation practice, what we do is we need to develop an understanding of dukkha, an understanding of sukha. Yeah. And that's where it comes to right intention. So in the Mahasatipatthana Sutta, the Buddha asks, what is right intention? A meditator generates the intention towards abandoning, the intention towards harmlessness. This is called right intention. Okay. If we take a look at later on right effort, there's a formula on how to fulfill right intention. So this formula can appear in two different ways. You've got to bear with me here. Okay, so right intention is what we do or what we incline our mind towards. This is the activity of the practice, and it ties into right effort. If we're developing samatha, so in MIDL, you're developing relaxation, calm, tranquility, samadhi, so on. Then what you do is you apply this formula like this. You guard, abandon, cultivate, establish. Yeah. If you're developing vipassana insight, so if you've got lots of hindrances coming up, you're caught up in stuff, what you do is you abandon, guard, cultivate, establish, and we'll look into this. Yeah. So you abandon first. Why? Because you're already caught up in it. You can't guard when you're already caught up in something. When you're already caught up in the mind, you're caught up in suffering. So a little formula, the way that I look at it is this, and this is a little extract from the book that might never get finished. But here it is. So what I mean by guarding means to develop, what I mean by abandoning. Abandoning means to develop and act upon the intention to abandon any unskillful thought, speech, or action, or unwholesome qualities of heart that have already arisen. Yeah? So abandoning is recognizing what's there. Yeah? Any unwholesome or unskillful, akusala, qualities of heart or mind. Yeah? That have already arisen. So that's when it's to do with vipassana insight, because you notice, oh, this is present within me. Yeah, this craving is present. This aversion is present. This restlessness is present. This dullness is present. So it's recognizing when it's present. And so that's when we abandon. With vipassana insight, when we guard, is when we actually weaken the tendencies that support that hindrance. So as I start to come to understand physical restlessness and the conditions for it to be there, and I learn to change those conditions. So the conditions to change the restlessness is to experience it and to soften, relax awareness into your body. Creating that space around that restlessness, allowing it to be there, the restless energy, but coming in, relaxing into your body, finding enjoyment in that, and removing the energy from that restlessness, removing the aversion in your mind that is actually feeding that until it starts to calm down. As we get more skilled, we're able to sit in meditation, and even if we've got restlessness from the day, we can gently soften, relax, and remove the energy of that restlessness, and quite quickly come to a feeling of comfort and ease in our body. But in the beginning, it's our path to understand what's feeding this restlessness. How do I remove the energy that's feeding this? So really getting to understand restlessness and learning to relax simply by dropping your shoulders or by taking some gentle breaths. So you start to get a taste of what it means to relax, to let go. You start to get a taste of what it means for that restlessness to come down. Once we can repeat that again and again, change those conditions, then when in our practice, physical restlessness gets weaker and weaker, until it no longer arises anymore. Yeah. Once that physical restlessness gets weak, then we move into guarding. Guarding means we notice that slight physical restlessness coming up, but we understand how to abandon the conditions that support it. So the physical restlessness never gets strong. Now you can see everyone understand what I'm talking about here. Now we can apply this to anything. We can apply this to getting lost in thoughts. At first, we get lost in them again and again. If I fight and struggle against this, I try to stop the thoughts. I try to soften to make them go away. I try to push them away from my mind. All I'm doing is approaching that thinking with aversion. I'm cultivating aversion within my mind. It will come back to bite me later on. Even if I manage to suppress it, it will start to appear somewhere else. Yeah, aversion doesn't care what the object is. So we can practice it. But if I understand that the condition for this continuous thinking and worrying is that I'm actually interested in it, that I actually give it value, that every time my mind presents it to me, I go, wow, that looks like a really tasty treat to chew on. It's that participation and the relationship within that thought of attraction or aversion that keeps feeding that thinking, keeps bringing it up, keeps churning it over. If I notice that and how much effort it takes, and I soften, relax that effort, being very aware, clearly comprehending of the awareness returning back to my body again as I soften, relax, not trying to make the thought go away, not trying to solve the problem, but relaxing my interest in it, allowing the mind to think. Dogs bark, cats purr, minds think. That's the end of it. There's nothing personal in it. That's just what they're designed to do. Yeah. But we just allow it to be there. Relax our participation, enjoy and let it go of it. And gradually our mind starts to downgrade the importance of that worrying, of that desire thinking. It will start to fade. When it fades and you move into guarding, guarding means you notice your mind start to produce a thought, but you no longer get lost or absorbed in it. As soon as you notice that little thought go up as a little thought bubble, just soften, relax your interest in it. Ah, there it is. Allow that thought bubble to pop or do whatever. It can do whatever it wants. Who cares? Yeah. But we no longer feed it with guarding. And then, of course, we come back to samatha. So abandon guard in regards to vipassana. In regards to when you're developing samatha and your mind's inclining that way, what you do is you notice, you start with guarding. Since you're in a samatha state, those hindrances are not there yet. Yeah? You're enjoying the pleasure of relaxing, letting go, developing relaxation, developing calm, and then suddenly a hindrance starts to come up. You start to notice some dullness coming up. From the beginning, it's starting to grow. As soon as you notice it, yeah, then you increase your curiosity, increase the clarity of your comprehension of what's going on now. You change the conditions for that dullness before it becomes gross dullness and sinking mind. Yeah? Yeah. So guard, abandon. If you get sucked and lost in that, yeah, you don't pick it up fast enough and you get lost, then you have to change to Vipassana insight again. Yeah. So guard and notice. What we could say abandoning is abandoning the conditions for it before it gets strong. Yeah, that's a better way of putting it. But if you do get lost in it, then you go into abandon guard. Cultivate establish is the same for both Vipassana insight and for samatha. Cultivate means that as the hindrances become weaker, you'll start to notice that missing within that is those wholesome qualities. Yeah. So I've got here Intention, okay, so cultivate. To develop and act upon the intention to cultivate the conditions for the arising of any wholesome qualities of heart or skillful thought, speech, or action that have not yet arisen, and establish is to develop and act upon the intention to establish wholesome qualities of heart and skillful thought, speech, and action as your natural way of being. What I found in my own practice is Vipassana insight developed and hindrances got weaker, is I started to become very indifferent in life, very very distant to others, distant to myself, distant to everything. It's like life was just a bowl of dukkha. I'm not really interested. Everybody else is suffering. My suffering's dropped off a lot. Yeah. And my mind and my heart just felt very dry. Now, I thought as insight developed and got deeper, that my heart, well, this is what messages that I read in books or heard in talks, that my heart would spontaneously open and love and compassion for all beings would come flowing out. Well, it didn't. It didn't. I just become very dry and indifferent. Yeah. This is when I started to understand the Buddha's teaching: abandon guard, cultivate, establish. Since so much of my life was spent in aversion, spent in anger, spent in desire, yeah, spent being jealous of other people, the wholesome qualities of heart were never cultivated. I never practiced them in my life. I wasn't practicing them. So they were incredibly weak within me. Generosity was over the top. I bet you couldn't guess that one. Generosity was way over the top. But all the other wholesome ones, like love and kindness, compassion, all those sorts of things, joy, sympathetic joy, joy for others' success, are really weak in me. So just because anger gets weaker in you, just because aversion gets weaker, just because jealousy gets weaker, just because desire gets weaker, and you start to feel an absence of those, it doesn't mean that the path is completed yet. A large part of the path, then, the Buddha said, in the Noble Eightfold Path is to cultivate, establish. So we intentionally look for situations in our seated practice by acting kindly towards what we experience. Be kind to difficult experiences. Be kind to whatever arises. Be caring, kind, loving, compassionate to yourself. Understand from your own suffering that others suffer too, so you can feel empathy and compassion towards them. The great thing about the suffering within the meditative path is it develops a lot of empathy. I understand what it's like to have anxiety. I understand. I understand how much it hurts to be angry. I understand what it's like to be depressed. I understand what it's like to be overcome with lust. I understand what it's like to be selfish. I understand what it's like to be jealous. I understand what it feels like to not be loved or feel like I'm not loved, to not like myself. I understand. I can understand other people because I can understand what it feels like to be there myself. So whatever you're going through now, these difficulties, you are developing empathy. You are developing compassion through becoming intimate with your own suffering. You know what it's like to be there. And so it allows you to connect with others, other people, other animals, this planet. You understand. So we look within ourselves as these things get weaker, and we intentionally look for situations to cultivate love and kindness, cultivate generosity, cultivate joy for other success. Look for what's weak in yourself. When you get out of retreat, look for situations. Look for situations where you can practice these wholesome, skillful qualities, the ones that make you feel closer to yourself, your family, your friends, society, the world. Practice them intentionally. Practice them in your formal practice on the retreat, and then bring them out and practice them in daily life. The Buddha said, until they become your natural way of being, established, your dwelling place, your home. This is what complements insight. Insight without this samatha aspect is dry. Yeah. Insight will disconnect, disenchant, pull away, which is really good. It's liberating. But then the wholesome qualities are what we cultivate to come back again, to connect. Important. Just sharing what I've experienced in my own practice. Still a work in progress. We're still going. Wonderful. As we start to apply, develop that intention to abandon, guard, cultivate, establish in our practice, that's what you're doing. You're cultivating samatha and you're abandoning and guarding whatever hindrances arise. Yeah. What you'll start to do is you'll start to develop understanding. And that understanding is developed on right speech, right action, right livelihood. So it's developed on everything you think, everything you say, everything you do. And livelihood is the expression of your life. We live our life as an expression of who we are. Yeah? Everything comes together. So where do you develop insight? Is it in this strange place on the other side of the world? No, it's in our speech, action, livelihood. This is where morality comes in, Sila. Sila is right in the middle of the Noble Eightfold Path. It's not at the beginning. It's not at the, well, it appears at the end. The Buddha put it right in the middle. Right view, right intention. Yeah. This is the wisdom group. That's how we cultivate, develop wisdom. Where do we develop wisdom? On speech, action, livelihood. The other night when we began the retreat, what we did is we chanted the precepts, which I haven't got here, which I thought I had, but anyway, I should know them off by heart, shouldn't I? We chanted the precepts. And so if you look at the precepts, the first precept is to refrain from killing living beings. I've always thought that was very gross. Yeah. Prefer to see it as the first precept is I undertake the precept towards harmlessness. Now I see the precepts as a skill of refinement, of something that we can refine, and the refinement never ends. Never ends. And we might look at the precepts in depth another time, another talk. But the refinement never ends. It's not like don't do this, yeah, don't kill living beings. It's like, how many ways in the way I think, speak, and act do I cause harm? Harm to myself, harm to others, harm to living beings around me, harm to this planet. Living your life devoted towards harmlessness. It's the first precept. I think monks have 227 rules. Probably every time someone found a new way to disrespect someone else, there's a new rule. Society probably began with one rule. Just respect each other. And then every time somebody found a new way to disrespect somebody else or themselves, then society put in new rules, and then we need professional rule interpreters now to even understand what all the rules are. Way too many. What about non-harm? What if in society we had non-harm? Non-harm towards yourself, non-harm towards others. So non-harm covers them all. It really does. Are there ways that you can harm yourself in the way you speak to yourself, in the way you act, in things that you do? Covers everything, doesn't it? So non-harm. Yeah. The next one is not stealing, which is very grace. So I prefer to see that as not taking what isn't given. Now, this isn't only physical objects. Can we take away our own self-esteem by the way we treat ourselves? Can we take away our own peace of mind by indulging in things that we shouldn't? Can we take away someone's happiness by gossiping about them behind their back? Yeah. There's so many ways that we can take something that hasn't been given freely. The next precept is sexuality, often translated as sexuality. So in retreat, you're meant to be celibate. Yeah. And it means to have a respectful sexual life in daily life. That's how it's normally translated. One that's not causing harm to yourself or the other. I prefer to translate it as sensuality. So refrain from trying to extract pleasure from the six sense fields. And that includes your body in sex. So not trying to get your pleasure and happiness out of the six senses. Yeah. Again, it's a refinement. Notice how they're all refinements. They can be refined gradually. Yeah. Oh, off the top of my head. The next one is speech. This includes thoughts, the way that you're thinking. Thinking kind thoughts, thinking caring thoughts. Inclining your mind when you notice towards the kusala, the wholesome, the skillful. Yeah. Understanding the power of speech. Understanding that words carry energy. If I speak in a harsh way, that speech is actually carrying that harshness into the heart of another person. If I speak with anger, why am I shouting angry words at someone? Because I want that poison of those words to pierce their armor and go into their heart. It's horrible. We load the words up to cause harm. This is rife on social media. Yeah, loaded words. What if we spoke gently and kindly? Do kind words enter your heart as well? Can they enter in, pierce the thickest armor? We can actually reach somebody's heart with kind words, kind speech. We can reach our own words with kind thoughts. Yeah. We can actually affect others by how we move through the world. Do we move harshly or do we move gently with care, very aware of everything that we're doing and the impact it has on ourselves and others and on this planet? Yeah. The fifth precept is often to do with intoxicants, not drinking alcohol and not taking drugs. Yeah. Okay. But I prefer to see this as intoxication of the mind, anything that lowers the clarity of awareness. The mind gets intoxicated and the clarity of awareness lowers. It's more to do that with the effect on your awareness. As insight meditators, what we're looking at doing is increasing the clarity of our awareness, clarity of comprehension. And there's many things beyond alcohol and drugs that can do that. Scrolling on your phone on a forum can do that. You've got a lot of these big social media platforms. I'm not going to advertise. They're designed to detoxify the mind. Lots of the big ones on the internet are designed to detoxify the mind. Yeah, there's so many different ways, isn't there? Porn sites are designed to detoxify your mind. The news on the television and lots of television programs, they're all intoxicants. They all intoxify the mind. They affect the clarity of your awareness. Just something to be really aware of. And you'll notice that you'll go from withdrawals from them on the retreat, from these drugs, these intoxicants. Yeah. So what we do is we develop our insight on everything we think, say, and do, speech, action, livelihood. Now, when we try to do that, we find that when we come in through immature right view, we come in with lack of clarity, we come with an agitated mind, agitated body, and we can't see anything clearly. All we see is that my mind and my body is a mess. I liken it to being in a washing machine, just turbulent mess. Yeah. So this is where the last part of the Noble Eightfold Path comes in. Right effort, right mindfulness, right unification. And unification is a translation of samadhi. Yeah. We come to the meditation and it's a mess. So what we need to do is we first study what does it mean by right effort. And right effort applies to right intention, to abandon, guard, cultivate, establish. Yeah, or guard, abandon, cultivate, establish. So this begins our meditation practice. We're sitting down for meditation here, and we're going to look at trying to increase the clarity of our awareness so we can see more clearly what's going on within us. So we sit down and we start to look at this effort. Our effort is towards that, towards the wholesome, the skillful. To see that clearly, we need mindfulness. And so that's when we learn to arouse mindfulness. The mindfulness is remembering what we're experiencing now and being very clear about what that is, trying to keep it in mind. As we do this, then we develop insight into both relaxation and calm, and also insight into hindrances. That's your meditative path during your mindfulness of breathing. That's your meditative path during walking, meditation, and daily activities. That's what you're doing then. You're finding that balance in effort and you're cultivating mindfulness to do that. As that effort and as the effort balances and mindfulness increases, the hindrances will weaken and samadhi will start to develop. Your mind will start to unify. As it unifies, you'll start to see very clearly anicca, dukkha, and anatta, those three characteristics. Yeah? In seeing anicca, dukkha, and anatta, you'll develop insight. They all have one message. Anicca says, I am impermanent. I am unsatisfying. Let me go. Dukkha says, if you grasp onto anything that is anicca, impermanent, unsatisfying, you will suffer. If you let go of it, suffering will cease. Anatta says one thing, you do not own me. I happen by myself. I am none of your business. If you grab onto me, if you grab onto or try to control something that you do not own, you will get dukkha, you will suffer. Let go. And Nietzsche says, let go. Dukkha says, let go. Anatta says, let go. As you develop insight into anicca, dukkha, and anatta, you will develop insight. As it deepens, that insight will become wisdom. That wisdom will change your view. Every time you circle through the Noble Eightfold Path in this way, by observing everything you think, say, and do, cultivating balance and effort, mindfulness, unification, They increase clarity. They allow insight. Insight affects wisdom. Wisdom will then affect the way, or will affect right intention. It will affect the way that you abandon, the way that you guard, the way that you cultivate, the way you establish. That will then affect everything that you think, say, and do within your life. Your morality, sila, will change. If your morality does not become more refined through insight, it's not insight. If your morality does not change, the insight has not turned into wisdom. Wisdom says let go. We let go in everything we think, say, and do. We become more sensitive to morality and we refine our morality. The refined morality creates the conditions for the meditation, yeah, for the effort, mindfulness, unification. And so what it looks like this, the beginning group in the path is panya, wisdom, yeah, right? The next part is morality, sila, yeah. The next part is samadhi, that's unification. The wisdom group, insight leads to wisdom, yeah. Wisdom informs sila that leads to harmony. The harmony of sila that develops affects the samadhi. So the samadhi is that calm that leads to increased clarity. The clarity develops conditions for insight. Insight creates wisdom. Wisdom refines morality. Morality creates the conditions for calm. So if we're looking at from where we're sitting in meditation, we're looking calm, insight, letting go, immorality towards harmony, calm, insight, letting go. And in this way, the Noble Eightfold Path circles. And we can actually see it in our own meditation practice. This circling of the Noble Eightfold Path, you develop that relaxation and calm, you increase in clarity. From the clarity, you develop insight that leads to wisdom. Wisdom informs sila that refines it towards harmony. Harmony develops the conditions for calm, and so on. So the Noble Eightfold Path turns, and now we have the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the turning of the wheel of Dharma. It turned when one bhikkhu understood the Buddha's message and reached Sotapanna, was the first Sotapanna. But this is also the turning of the wheel of Dharma. It's not just transmission. It's actually something we can experience in our practice. And just to finish up for you all, because I know this talk ended up longer than what I wanted it to, I would like you all to be really curious about noticing the Noble Eightfold Path in your practice. Notice how insight affects sila, morality, and morality, that harmony, affects the development of calm, and calm increases clarity for insight and so on. Take a look at it. And where you can notice it is any time you're distracted, you will see the Noble Eightfold Path. Yeah. If you soften, relax, and develop relaxation and calm, and your mind wanders, when your mind wanders, you develop insight. That insight says to let go. When you let go, it returns to calm. Yeah. So you have the calm, insight, letting go, calm, insight, letting go. In any moment of observation, yeah, within your practice, you can see that happening. Yeah. And the GOS formula is designed to actually try to fulfill that with the ground, observe, soften, smile. Wonderful.